Hey Dan, I'll
Welcome,
take
everybody.
recording permission.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. I will try to figure out how to give that to you. I think I'll just make you co-host because that's the easiest way I know how to do it. And welcome everybody to the Eden Fractal meeting, the fifth Eden Fractal meeting. So awesome to be here. Oh. Cool. So I suppose for people who are new here, so Dominic and Jesse, I think it's your first time. I think everybody else is familiar. But we'll get started with the breakout room and we'll do the Fractal process starting at 9, or I'm sorry, not 9, 13:15 UTC. So in 11 minutes, and then we'll do a 40-minute breakout room. I also have a brief presentation that I can show that just goes over that a bit more and goes over it in a visual way as well. So I can show that in the next few minutes if you'd like. But if anybody has any questions or would like to share any thoughts before we get started, then please feel free. And Dominic, I think your image froze, so it looks like you're very it looks like you're very not convinced about it or very skeptical. You're looking off.
How do you decide how many people per breakout room?
Well, we aim to have 6, and then if we can't have 6, then we'll have 5. And I suppose if we really get into a situation where we have if we have 13, 14, or 18 people, then you can't break into groups of 6 or 5. You have to do a group of 4, which I suppose that we can do if necessary. But otherwise, we just aim to have groups of 6, and then the Zoom software with the breakout rooms, I'm not sure if you ever used it, but it makes it pretty easy where you just click the breakout rooms button and then it says how many people do you want in each room, or how many rooms you want, and then you can, it shows you how many participants there'll be in room. And then it just randomly happens. And Jesse, he also came out with I suppose, proposal for kind of an Eden marketing fractal, and he had some thoughts about maybe kind of merging that with this to start out with. And so I don't know if Jesse would like to share that at all, or I know you shared it publicly in the group, but I thought that was pretty cool. And Jesse mentioned the possibility of like maybe having a networking session before these meetings where people can come from all over, like if they're interested in crypto and stuff, and then talk about all sorts of stuff. So I think that is something interesting to explore in the future that could be really helpful. And I figured maybe it'd just be helpful to just bring it up briefly here as well.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And so I have a proposal for Eden to expand the focus of it to market it as a crypto networking group. And the original idea, one that I've thought of since the Fractally white paper came out, that we should segregate essentially the breakout rooms, or segregate the meetings by work type. When you have marketing and developing in the same breakout room, it makes the process less accurate, in my opinion. So the original idea was to have what we're doing here, but copied, like just have another copy of it essentially. But to get there in a gradual way, James Mart had suggested to merge the two. And when we get to like a number of, let's say like 20 to 30 people that are focused on growing the Eden membership, focused on marketing, then we can go in a separate way. The only adjustment that I would ask for this group would be to have the Zoom link open at 12:30 UTC, and so we can have some networking going on. And I think it'd be cool for like the EOS community. It doesn't have to be just like the influencers we're going to be reaching out to. Like, for example, everyone here, well, some of you, I know what you kind of do outside of EOS, but I think a lot of us in the EOS community don't really know like what our passions are outside of EOS, what our network looks like, how could we help other than like EOS. And so I think it'd be cool for the EOS community to join that. And so hopefully it would just be like the same kind of thing. We'd go into breakout rooms, and instead of ranking, it would just be, you have 3 minutes to give your kind of marketing pitch, what your network is, how you can help, what are you interested in. And so we could just get to know everyone. Then everyone comes back in a room like this. Then we get re-randomized into ranking. And this is where people who want to grow Eden membership can potentially earn from doing that. And so that's the proposal. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think the networking is a huge a fractal around metaverses and wax. And because it's such a diverse group, the meetings have gone quite a bit over, because what people are getting value out of is that networking part. So so yeah, it was less about the exercise of governance, because it's such a diverse group, and there's a huge challenge of people that aren't into the games that are really into governance, and they're almost asking for that type of structure. Mind you, it's still very small, but the networking it's really valuable to capture people's passions, so we can see where we can put our attention, best focus for the group.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm very supportive of the proposal as well, and looking forward to exploring this more. And I think it'll be good for the group. And I think it'll probably be good to discuss it more in detail another time too, when we have more time as well. So everybody can weigh in their opinions without the breakout room coming in 5 minutes. Does anybody want to share any quick thoughts about that, or anything else before we go in? And also, should I start sharing the presentation? And I see that Dominic, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I actually met with Jesse yesterday to discuss, what he was working on and get a little more information. And it's something I've been thinking about in a slightly different capacity. And it'll be very copacetic with what he's doing if I can pull it off. But it's such a critical element as a way, I think, to attract people to the ecosystem too, right? It's always about developers and apps and just users. And I don't know of any other networks or communities that are really kind of putting that forward. Maybe they are, but I don't think so. I haven't heard of it, at least. So I think it's very cool that way too. Like a recruiting tool, if you will.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And thank you, Dominic. We have 4 minutes before we go in. I think it might be helpful to share the presentation just briefly, but I'm up to do it however everybody wants. I think that'd probably be helpful for Dominic and Jesse to see it. Does anybody have any other way you'd like to do it, or anything else like to ask, or should I start with the presentation? Okay, got the thumbs up from Vlad. Sounds good. And yeah, feel free to jump in at any point if anything is not clear, and I'll just go through this in like 2 minutes, just really quick. I also saw Perry was here too, so I don't know if he's able to join, but hopefully. Okay, cool. So everybody's able to see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Dwayne, and thank you, Jesse. So, yep, welcome everybody. So as I was saying before, we're having an introduction now, and then in about 3 minutes, we'll break out into the breakout rooms, and we'll do the Fractal process, and then the breakout rooms will last for 40 minutes. Chuck also just shared the drop was live after the breakouts. Awesome, thank you, Chuck. And then at 1400, we'll post consensus and discussion, or between 1400 and 1500, and we'll post discussion probably in both the Zoom chat. Yes, there's NFTs that Chuck has been putting together, which are really awesome.
Cool.
and so those will be, I believe, claimable. And I think that, well, I don't know if Chuck wants to share exactly the details, but last week there was a link that everybody who joined could easily claim it. Yep, so that's the itinerary that I was just mentioning. Thank you everybody so much for being here. This is Eden Fractal, and this is week 5. This is kind of like the 1-month anniversary because we started on, I think, the 8th or so. So awesome time so far. Thank you so much and congratulations. We're recording the community room and we're recording for both video purposes on sharing on social media. So this video will be shared on social media, and then also for consensus purposes, we'll record the chat later on as well. And you might want to record your breakout room on your own computer, or OBS or Zoom or whatever if you want. I'll be recording my room, and it's kind of helpful to have the video in many cases as well, but it's up to you. Hope everybody enjoys. I think the general goals of this meeting, we can discuss it in the future, of course, but I think it's basically to help Eden, help EOS, and have fun. Everybody has a great time and helps these great communities a lot. The itinerary, first we'll break down to the breakout rooms, and then while you're in the breakout rooms for about 3, maybe up to 5 minutes, each person will share what they're doing to help Eden on EOS is how I recommend to do it. And it's best to focus on your contributions. We'll do that in 40 minutes as opposed to 45 minutes from the Genesis Fractal group. A little bit faster here, and basically rank contributions from 1 to 6, and according to how much contributions are helping Eden on EOS. And with the Fractal process, you have to form consensus with at least 66%. So if there's 6 people in the group, then 4 to 6 people have to agree. Vlad built this tool. If Vlad or somebody could share the link, that'd be helpful at some point, where you can write the EOS account names of the people who participate here, and then you can hit submit and submit it with Anchor. And so it works very well. And then we'll also do the Zoom chat as a backup method in case that doesn't work. The rank 6 is the highest, and that's the most helpful. And everybody's participating a huge amount by just, where everyone's helping a huge amount by just being here. So thank you so much. And then all participants earn respect, EOS and EOS, if they reach consensus. And yep, so there's, you can earn EOS, there's 100 EOS per week that I've been sponsoring with Eden Creators, and Patrick from Nova Crypto is about to sponsor with, for the next 5 weeks, which is awesome. That's all from Pomelo and Eden. And we're working on like MSIG and stuff like that. And you also get Eden Respect on chain and NFTs from Chuck, which are awesome. And those are just some repeated slides. Basically, I think that's everything. So if anybody has any questions or thoughts, it's also 9:15 now, so we can get into it whenever we're ready. And thank you for listening. Hope that helped. And welcome Perry, and welcome Jorge, and welcome Oscar too.
Thank you, Dan.
Dan, and hello everyone.
Cool. Sounds great. Well, yeah, thanks again so much for joining. Great to see you. And I suppose if nobody has.
So for this,
comments,
I have a question.
Okay.
So for this front end that Vlad put in the chat, is there a particular format, Vlad, that we need to input in your front end?
Just the account names.
And the group number is the breakout room number?
Correct.
All right, thanks.
Okay, cool. So I'll start the breakout rooms now. Hope everybody has a great time. You're going to join room 2, right, Felix? Oh, there we go.
So he's not quite as into the, crazy shit that I put together.
Well, that's what I said before. There's some overlap. So to be determined how that plays out.
I'm intrigued. He left
Good
me
morning,
a cliffhanger. Hello.
Good morning, and great to see you, Perry, too. I think it's the first time that that we've spoken on video before.
It is. This is the first time on, I guess, on video, and also in Eden Fractally.
Yes.
Wednesday
Yes,
morning.
welcome.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
and thanks for joining. Yep. Should we get started with the contributions? Would anybody like to go first and share what you've been doing to help Eden and EOS?
Take it away, Dan.
Okay, sure. Sounds good. So I usually make a quick presentation, so I'll do that now, and I will just set up my timer real quick so I don't go over time. And cool. So sorry for the slight delay. I wasn't super prepared, but now it's ready to go. So yep, there's a bunch of stuff I've been doing to help Eden and EOS this week. A lot of it has been revolving around helping with this group, the Eden Fractal. So I've been kind of just developing this website a little bit with just minor updates, edenfractal.com. I put out the tweet from the Eden Fractal account yesterday to share that, and it got some decent engagement. I posted in a bunch of groups just to help promote the event. And I made a bit of artwork. I published the last week's video of the Eden Fractal meeting on the Eden Creators channel, and I've been kind of building up this new channel with just a lot of video content from town halls and Alien World Fractal and stuff like that, and Genesis Fractally to help grow it. I also participated in the Alien Worlds Fractal, which I was just admitting Lenny, so hopefully somebody can figure out how to get him into the group. If not, then maybe I'll just quickly check breakout room. Sorry about that. I'm learning how to do this. I'll put Lenny in a room. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I participated in the Alien Worlds Fractal, which isn't super related to this really, but it's related to the Fractally process. And welcome, Lenny. And then what's related is because I was speaking about Eden Fractal a bit there and inviting everybody to join. So there's a private Wax community there and inviting people to join EOS and then talking about the Fractally process. And then I also posted the video about that there. I also joined the Eden or the Genesis Fractally meeting on Saturday. And then sorry for my slides are a bit out of order right now. I didn't get much time to organize it, but I did a lot of research into the article that Dan Larimer wrote this week about what the legal standing of DAOs is. And then while I was at that Genesis Fractally meeting, I spoke with Dan for, I don't know, probably like 20 minutes or so and just asked a bunch of questions about that, which I feel like are really helpful for Eden Fractal and DAOs in general, and planning on doing more research into that in the future. And then I also just kind of help promote Eden Fractal a bit there as well. And EOS, I also host the Hot Sauce. So I talked about a lot of topics with Vitalik and Pomelo and Eden and so forth. I encourage everybody to join Eden. So that was exciting as always. And then I've just been doing lots of work behind the scenes. I joined Chris and the Helios team for the Helios Twitter Spaces on Friday, and we talked about EOS and Fractally and Eden Fractal a bit to help promote it there. And then I also co-hosted with Felix the Eden on EOS town hall this week, where we talked a lot about future of Eden and the future of EOS and so forth. And then I also did a lot of work over the past couple of weeks following with a story about Vitalik praising EOS. So I helped write the Everything EOS Weekly reports. And so I felt like this was a good opportunity to write like a really great story about Vitalik. I think that Vitalik is interested in EOS. I think he'd be really helpful for EOS, and there's a great connection here. So I did a lot of research into Vitalik, and then I wrote a big kind of document yesterday about why Vitalik is interested in EOS. And I also suggested a tweet thread for the ENF to put out to help inspire Vitalik and bring more attention from Vitalik and so forth. So, and just to give a brief sample, like I think it could be hugely helpful. Obviously he's very busy, but if we can get through to Vitalik, then I think that'd be really helpful. I think that EOS with Eden and Fractally and Eden Fractal and Pomelo is like really in line with Vitalik's goals as far as like making public goods and engineering a better society and so forth. So yep, there's just a bunch of stuff there with lots of words, kind of like a market research for Vitalik to help EOS and so forth. And then I also just followed with EOS, of course, and then retweeted Eve's tweet about GameFly, which is really cool, and a bunch of other tweets. So sorry that was a bit long, but yeah, that's it. Thank you. Would anybody else like to go next, or should I nominate somebody?
Nominations work well.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. I suppose that maybe I'll nominate Perry because I saw he just shared a file, and I'm guessing that's maybe contributions. Mike, would you like to go next, Perry?
Yes,
Okay.
I don't know if you guys can see that. Can you see, can you, are you able to view that file, that image?
Yep, I see it. It looks cool.
That is a website that I'm going to be revealing very shortly, probably sometime between now and Saturday morning. And that's dnews.zone. And what you see there is a screenshot of the homepage. Chris, you'll recognize your face there. Do you see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. It has. What I've done is I've aggregated all the different participants into a single website, a single stream, along with a calendar that includes meetings like the one that we're in right now, all from the entire community, into a single website that is mobile friendly and not subject to Twitter censorship or YouTube censorship. It's a straight feeds from all of the participants. So we're going to be able to see for the first time what the community looks like minute to minute, or let's say hour to hour, not minute to minute, hour to hour. It's updated hourly from all the different participants. So I'm really super excited about that. And I hope you guys like it. Even if you disagree with me about some of the other things, Chris, we don't agree on everything, but I hope that you can appreciate what I've done. So that's what I've been working on furiously for the last weeks, and that's probably why I haven't participated in as many meetings as I had before. But that's going to change fairly shortly. So I'm not sure how that could be. How else I could? If you guys have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer it. But that's the basic idea.
I think it's awesome. It's a much needed resource. It's great, Perry.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Dominic.
Yeah,
So
great.
that's what I've got. You guys can see me on Telegram. I'm definitely engaging for sure, and I am spending quite a bit of time doing that. For me, the important topics that I've expressed have to do with our social media accounts, or let's say our channels like Telegram, who's controlling that, and the direction of the network in general, and the direction of Eden itself. And I'm not going to go over those points now, but you guys know roughly where I'm going with that. So I'm participating, I'm expressing myself, spending a lot of time on it. Between that website and my engagement, it's a full-time job. So that's what I'm doing. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Barry. Just one question that I have. I think you probably mentioned it, but I don't remember exactly what you said. So is this website live right now? And can you click on all the links, like the different pages, or is this going to be released soon?
Well, it is live to me. I haven't given you the address. If you go to dnews.zone, you'll get a construction page, but I have a subdomain that I operate on, that I develop on, that I'd rather not disclose at this particular moment.
Okay.
However, since we have, I believe, 2 people in this meeting who actually do produce shows, which are part of that calendar, which is part of the model that I intend to move forward with. That model will include people like yourself, Dan, and Chris, who are hosting these shows, the ability to add and edit your own shows, your own events directly on the site. Now that isn't, I haven't done that. I haven't installed that on the site yet. I haven't put that on the site yet, but I have it for other clients of mine on other websites. So that won't take too long. I imagine no more than a week after Saturday that I should be able to do that. So what that means is is that when you have a new account with a new Zoom link or whatever, any kind of update to your event, you can go and modify that. Now the events are produced. I've made it really easy in the sense that you can simply create an event and put it out to a whole year. If it's the same day and the same time and the same information, you can just repeat it. So you don't, and you can edit them either one-off or the whole series, like the whole 52 weeks, if you want to go out for a year. And then you can go and you can say, well, on Christmas, our meeting shows up on Christmas. We're going to have a special meeting or we're going to have no meeting. So it's really flexible, it's really easy, and it minimizes the amount of work. And I want to offer that to the hosts like yourself, Dan and Chris, to be able to handle that directly yourself by logging into the interface. If you choose not to do that, that's fine. I'm going to ask somebody else to help me to manage all of that stuff. And whoever does that, including yourself, you can get credit, of course, for participating. That's work towards Eden. So that's kind of the model that I'm going for. So after the meeting, if Dan and Chris, if you'd like to go offline, I can set you. I can kind of talk more about how it would work, and that's exactly where I want to go. So I want to engage the community to participate, so that I can focus on the streams themselves that come in regularly, and make sure that those are maintained, the site is maintained regularly. And I want to delegate out the event management to the actual people who are hosting the events. That seems like the logical thing. And then once all of that is organized, I'll just finish it really quickly. Once all of that is organized and working well, I feel like the best thing that I could do for not only this community, but for the world, because I believe this is a useful tool, is to open source this thing. You could point it to other cryptos. You could create one for one particular blockchain. You could do one for knitting or crocheting. It doesn't matter. Whatever is getting censored can benefit from it. Whatever wants to come together can benefit, and especially decentralized communities. So I've taken a lot of time, and so I'll stop talking. Thank you.
So before we proceed, if I understood you correctly, you are gathering all the information. Well, you are creating a website to gather all the information from, for example, every time Dan or Chris create a post or a video or an interview, they usually post it in every Telegram group, every Discord channel, everywhere. You are gathering their information in one website, like.
That's right. That's right.
So they can stream right from that website outside of YouTube or Twitter, or you go through YouTube and Twitter. You have to channel through them.
I've taken the design principle of not actually having the articles, the videos, and the podcasts on my site. Now I bring them in internally on the website, so I can do full text searches. So if there's a description in the YouTube post, and somebody searches that on my website, they find that post. But when they click on that post, they don't go to a page on my website. They go to the actual original post. So it's not designed for advertisement. It's designed for the actual user experience.
So if YouTube removes the post, it disappears in your channel too, right?
That's true. That's true. So it's complete control of the community. They have control, and all I'm doing is offering really a convenience. So I'm not creating that content. I'm creating a convenience for not only people who are new to the community, and that's especially useful because it's just confusing. Let's be honest, with all the decentralized nature of our community, but also for people who are who are regularly involved. There's just a lot going on, and it's just easier just to go on one site and say, okay, good morning. What's happening today? Who posted something today? It's all in one place. It's right there at the top. Super easy. Click on it, see the video, do something else, and it saves me time. And I've been using it. I created it 2 years ago, and I've been using it for a few years for the general crypto market. And right now I'm in the process of focusing it on EOS.
So Perry, that sounds very cool and very interesting, but I do think that we should probably move on because we only have like 23 minutes left and we still have to hear 3 more contributions and have time for consensus.
Yes.
Would you like to nominate somebody to go next?
Chris.
Sure, thanks. I'll be very brief. This week for Eden on EOS, I've been working with Chuck on in the back end, sort of working with him on getting everything done in terms of what he's been doing publicly. I've been helping him out. Also, most importantly, helping get the election word out, tagging people who had to update their registration. Lots of content on the topic in terms of tweets and Telegram. And then yesterday I was on a Zoom live for 5.5 hours. That was wide open. Ended up bringing in 5 new Eden members through that process. Also, even with all of the chatter in the public Eden on EOS channel that was slightly off topic at times, still managed to get one individual who DM'd me asking for more questions, and I was able to talk him through it and inducted him yesterday. In addition, I did secure and confirm that Haifa DAO will be opening up a part of their alpha test, their DAO builder tool that's not publicly available, but we are going to be included as Eden as part of that alpha test group. So we'll be able to bring in the Eden member services of the circles into that tool. So it'll be far less sort of just ad hoc on a mirror board or whatever, but we can actually use that tool. And I'll be trying to take point on that in terms of getting us set up and try to structure that and educate people and try to just make that work for us. That's it. Dominic, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chris. So I've been, pretty consistently trying to get ready for this election. Those of you who don't know, I was able to get the winning bid to provide the election support and then do a bunch of documentation afterward. So that hopefully it's going to be really easy for other people to run an election themselves, use the existing software over there. In that process, I also kind of de facto became a general contractor because I was the only one with a proposal that has a company behind it. And in this crazy decentralized world, we do still actually need these things because Eve is not going to spend $40,000 and not have the paper trail. Because he wouldn't be able to count it as an expense for the foundation. And of course, he's under tremendous scrutiny, I'm sure. So I've been working with Eve quite a bit and trying to be of service there and make that happen. And I'm also, really, that's kind of an interesting thing, but, I talk to a lot of people and I'm very much about this current soul searching I feel like we're doing, and some of you have mentioned that a little bit, and we've all been part of different discussions, but I think we're reaching a bit of a potential crossroads or turning point, likely with this election and beyond, where is Eden just going to be a WPS type entity? Are we comfortable, or do we feel it's our purpose to take a greater role in governance? And so, I've learned over the years to try to ask people, what they think, right? Rather than just kind of talk a lot and see if they respond, right? In just a, forum. So I'm really just trying to get a feel for that and figure out where the sentiment is, because it doesn't make any sense to me that we, try to push one agenda or another. Hopefully, again, there's consensus on kind of how to do that. And then otherwise, I don't know. I'm just always in EOS land, but I suppose those are my contributions that are relative to this. Jorge? I hope that's how I pronounce your names, good sir.
Hey.
Was that correct?
Yeah, Jorge,
Okay.
Spanish. So I have a question for you. Could you please say again what you are doing with IFs?
I'm basically acting as the general contractor so that I'm going to receive the funding from him and then distribute it to EDAO and Adania. which are the two teams that won the technical awards. They've been working on the software already for the election, the date updates and various items. But then as a result of that, I'm kind of the only liaison with Eve. He wants it to be streamlined like that. And so I'm just sort of making sure he has all the paperwork he needs so he can give the payments to me, then I can distribute them. I'm supposed to kind of oversee the work now and make sure that everybody's kind of held accountable to their scope of work. And then once that's finished, make a submission back to Eve for the final payment for people's contracts. So.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess it's my turn. Well, for the last several weeks, I've been working on a series of posts, which I am publishing right now on the chat. On them, I analyzed pretty deeply, well, as deep as I've been able to, the whole fractal democracy protocol. Not particularly Eden's, but the recent version, second version of fractal democracy. So the most profound post I've created so far is the one called Towards a Statistical Simulation of Fractal Democracy, which led me to consider the nature of noise within these meetings. And from then I decided to propose myself as a candidate for this next Eden election in order to get funding to simulate this whole process under different parameters of psychological traits for individuals. That's in order to help the community to take decisions better, to know itself better, to not answer the questions of where we are going, at what velocity, to have a better intuition of how we operate. Another post I created last week was, the week before that one was the one called On Value Discovery on Fractal Democracy and Passive Income. It's a post I'm modifying right now because I reread the Fractal white paper and I noticed that it is far from optimizing to be a passive income opportunity for all the members, which is something I think we will all like to be. One of the things that the paper says is that, for example, if you create a post in the Fractally social network, you will receive respect from the readers of the post within the next hour, within the next 24 hours of publication, which is an excessively short time. If you compare this with YouTube, for example, there are some people that are earning money today from videos they created 10 years ago. So if we can enlarge that time, we can incentivize people to bring more quality content and more people, because anything you post on the Fractally website or on the Fractally social network will have repercussions forever. So I'm helping in giving that feedback to the Fractally core team. And of course, this will help the Eden Fractal community too. Finally, yesterday, thanks to Chris Barnes, I became an Eden member. And I guess that'll be for the most part for me.
Wow, this is going to be agonizing to choose between all these people.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Wow. I don't know. I'm just going to roll the dice. I'm rolling the dice over here, guys.
In that regard, I will propose, well, according to my research, that we prevent from self-ranking ourselves. I mean, we have really big contributors, really great contributions here. It's not so hard to find someone who probably did a better job than ourselves.
Okay. I'm happy to do that if the group wants to. I'm happy to go either way with self-voting or not self-voting. And then to respond to Perry's comment, yeah, it's often very hard. I don't know if you, I think you participated in the Genesis faculty group a couple of times. I think I saw you there maybe once or twice, but it's often hard because like there's so many amazing contributors in the EOS and Eden community. But something that's helpful to keep in mind is one, it's a long-term thing. It's bound to be unfair in any given week, but we'll just do our best. And rather than just rolling the dice, we should still try to, with the time we have, be as accurate as possible in assessing the contributions. Although, of course, it'll be difficult and bound to be unfair and inaccurate. Does anybody have any thoughts about what Jorge was suggesting with the self-ranking and stuff, or does anybody have any other thoughts before we start doing the consensus?
We already have consensus on that. We have 3 votes out of 5.
Yep, it's fine by me. Makes a lot of sense.
I've got a question for Jorge. I heard what you said about how you were advising the Fractally core team. Are you part of the Fractally team? I didn't.
No, I'm just doing this out of pleasure.
And they're listening. They're giving you their attention out of pleasure. How are you interacting with them?
Well, for example, for the first post, the second post I created, the one that mentioned the noise, Dan himself created a response. I found it fascinating. He's interested also in the simulation in order to somehow predict how the whole thing is going to evolve. However, I think, and it's totally understandable, if you have a roadmap, it's really hard to try to modify it on the fly. So for example, the UI, as far as I know, already has self-ranking incorporated. That could be modified for other versions of Fractal Democracy. So I guess it's something in the middle. It's not, yeah, something in the middle.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, so shall we begin the consensus, and should we do it with the method where we each type our vote for rank 6 in the Zoom chat and then count down to 3 and then hit enter all at the same time?
Now, I don't want to screw the vote up if this is a massive detail, but technically I'm not a Eden member yet. Chuck and I are working together, and hopefully in the next few days I'll get inducted. But I'm actually not a member. Of course, I have an account, and I've put myself. I've set up my profile, but I haven't gone through the induction.
That's not an issue. Yep.
No. Okay.
We came to consensus in the first meeting that we think this should be open for everybody, Eden members or not, and this can be a way that if people are interested to learn more Eden and join later, then they can. But anybody can join Eden Fractal.
Okay, cool.
So shall we go for level 6? Count of 3.
Ready. Is everybody ready? And does everybody understand how this works? I know it's Perry and Dominic's first time here. So do you understand the system where we'll vote in the Zoom chat and we'll count down to 3 and type in, or then we'll hit enter on whoever we think should be number 6?
Just their first name, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And voting for yourself is allowed. It's shunned.
Not allowed.
I think that we agreed that we're not going to do it this time.
We're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I would also be up for it to do it. I mean, personally, I think that it's better to allow self-ranking. And I've listened to lots of Jorge's arguments. And I think that Jorge makes a lot of great points. But I think that, and also Dan Larimer, James Mart, and many people have expressed that I think it's helpful to be able to express yourself. I think it makes it more expressive overall. So I would be personally more in favor of allowing ranked votes, but it doesn't really matter to me much either way. So I'm happy to do it either way. And I suppose we should just do it either way.
It doesn't matter to me either way, whatever. You guys.
The thing is that if, for example, in a room like this one, where everybody did great contributions, you allow self-ranking, then everybody's going to rank himself as top level. Because there is only one top level. In the next iteration, everybody's going to rank himself as second to best level. And at each step, nobody's going to be actually looking at grading the contributions of the other people. So it's better if everyone abstains to incorporate himself in the analysis, and actually looks at other people's contributions.
So I don't agree with all that. I think that you're making some assumptions that everybody will do that, and I think that it's still quite accurate. But I'm happy to do it where we won't rank ourselves. So how about we do it there? I think that Chris was in agreement too, and I don't think that Perry or I minded much. So let's do it where there's no self-ranking. I think is the best way to do it for now.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay, cool. I'm ready with my ranking whenever everybody else is, and we can count down to 3, 2, 1. Is everybody ready for the countdown?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. 3, 2, 1, go.
Oops.
So we have
Okay, I don't think we have much consensus. We
for
have
Dominic,
2 votes for
2 for
Dominic,
Chris.
2 votes for Chris, and 1 for Perry.
Perry.
My thinking, I was also thinking about ranking Dominic 6, but I thought that it was really cool what Chris did as far as the Zoom chat and inviting a bunch of people yesterday. And then
The thing
Chris is
with
also
that
doing
is
great work with Helios too. And then
it would
also
be irrelevant.
well, I would say it's irrelevant. It's helpful. And then
Oh,
also
if we didn't have an election, on Saturday, inviting people, and if we didn't get the code updated, all of this would be irrelevant if Dominic didn't, if he is not able to execute and succeed on what he has been doing. That's my point. Like Eden's going to fall apart if we don't update the code. If we don't have an election, we're going to be objectively a failure in many people's eyes. That's why I think this week he should get the top spot.
So are we judging that? I was judging his contribution, not the actual, the fact that he was doing the work. So I guess I'm learning about this. I wasn't making a judgment on the project itself. I was just judging that he was contributing. So maybe I'm right or wrong, but I'm learning here. I'm learning.
I'll change
Okay.
my vote for Dominic.
okay, so that means Dominic
I
has
have consensus now.
does he have consensus now then?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm happy to rank Dominic as 6 as well then. Okay, shall we proceed on to number 5?
Do we all put that in? Like, do I put my name in 6 for submission because it's consensus?
I'm sorry,
on
what's
the
up?
app on the app thing that's tied to Anchor?
Yes, but we don't have to do that right now. It's easiest to do all the 6-hour
Okay,
stuff here
got it.
first, and then we can do that during the post meeting after we wrap this up in 7 minutes.
got it.
Okay.
So we go for level 5.
Yep. Second. Yeah, I'm ready.
Are we ready? Okay. 3, 2, 1, and go.
I haven't voted yet. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Okay, well, you're supposed to vote at the same time, but that's okay.
Cheater.
That's not
Yeah.
Pull Jorge's votes.
Well, I
Opposed
haven't also checked your votes either. The thing is that the contributions are really meaningful. For example, Perry's contributions, I think, is really impactful in the long term. I guess because this is elections week, the most important thing, the urgent thing right now is in onboarding people. So I'll go for Chris.
Chris's habit.
Thank you.
Looks like that's consensus,
Okay,
right? It's 3.
I think so. It's kind of difficult to tell.
1, 2. Yeah,
I
we got
voted-
consensus on.
I voted
Chris.
Chris. Dan voted for Chris, what you did, and Jorge did. Then we had 2 votes for Jorge.
We got 3 for Chris.
Okay, so 3 to 5. I still get confused. I think that 3 to 5 is sufficient, but I'm not totally sure.
It's 66%.
Okay, yeah.
I know. 60%. 3 or 5 is
60.
60%.
But
Yeah,
then also,
60.
since Chris can't vote for himself, it's technically 3 out of 4. So that's 75%.
Right.
So, okay. So we'll move on now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Is everybody?
Mhm.
I'm ready.
Okay, that sounds good. 3, 2, 1, go.
Oh, sorry, jumped the kind of low. I think Jorge's content is also critical, and his engagement, just all the different stuff he's doing.
I would also advocate for myself here too. I have set these meetings up, and I didn't, or I mean, there's lots of people who've been setting up, but I've been playing a large role in setting these meetings up, and I've also been donating 100 EOS per week to these meetings, as well as the what's that?
I'm just assuming you've gotten a lot, to be honest. So I don't have backstory, because you should be getting a lot. And it's
Yeah.
kind of the same thing. I'm not voting for Perry right now because I'm assuming when he launches, he should get a shitload of votes. Because it's theoretically a promise, not that we don't trust you, but it's a screenshot, which I'm sure is going to launch and be great. So
Yeah,
those are my thinking. I'm just telling you my thinking.
I'm not worried about anything that happens here. I'm
Yeah.
I'm really just enthralled to participate in all of this. This is
Like,
for me. I feel like
Mm.
we're in a good spot here, guys.
well,
think
I
this
don't
is
know if you are
same.
going to be looking for additional funding of any kind, but like after seeing that, I would immediately put you in my campaign on Saturday and say it's something I would want to contribute to, because I think it's that
Awesome.
important
Wow.
personally. And I would
Wow.
contribute to a Pomelo as well.
Wow. Well, I'll contact you offline, Dominic.
Yeah,
Give you a peek.
absolutely. I think it's
All right.
great.
Thank you.
Super important.
So do we have consensus of on level 4, or we don't?
I'm not sure. I
I think
voted
that
for Jorge.
Jorge has 3 of 5 right now.
Yeah.
Although actually, out of the people who can't vote, no, yes, 3 out of 4. So that's good.
Okay. So level 3.
Okay, we are all ready. We have 2 minutes left, by the way, to wrap up.
3,
Okay.
2, 1.
3, 2, 1, go. And then
It
also
looks like Dan.
and then also, well, there hasn't been 5 votes, I believe, and Perry voted for Chris. You can't vote for Chris again, Perry. Chris has already been ranked, so you have to vote
Okay.
for
So who's left?
you kind of have to vote for me according to the self-ranking.
Yeah.
Well, I just
So-
did. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Okay.
just did. Okay. All right. There you
Okay.
go.
So it
So
looks like it's
Yeah.
Dan, then
We
Perry.
got consensus on Dan.
okay, sounds good. And then I'll just briefly respond to one. Perry, I totally agree. Like I'm in the same boat. I'm just thrilled that everybody's here, and I think that like the rankings are great, and the Fractally method of distributing Eden and EOS is awesome. But also just being here, it's super fun. And so thank you so much for joining us, Perry and Dominic as well. Yeah, that sounds good. And then also to reply to what you're saying, Dominic, too. I also have received a lot of respect in the past week, so I'm very happy to respect your contributions and Chris's and Jorge's and Perry's and everybody's. So yeah, thanks everybody so much.
Yeah, thank you,
Trying to
everyone.
get a feel for it, but I mean, I echo everybody. What a great group. I mean,
I think this is
we had
suggesting that
100 of these, going across the community, we'd be getting a lot of stuff done,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not that many. I mean, it's a community of hundreds of thousands of holders, or it certainly was at one point. So
Yeah, and we can absolutely do that too. We have the tooling, and you're also playing a big role with that in setting this up election, so we can do many more elections and many more meetings like this. I'm also going to hit closed rooms. I think that'll give us 60 seconds to have last minute discussions, but just in case it doesn't, then I'll just once again just say thank you. But I'm pretty sure it's going to give us 60 seconds. 60 seconds.
and so now we put it in the thing.
yes.
Now
I need
or
names.
right after. I'll close all rooms now. Okay, we have 60 seconds.
But I need your EOS accounts, guys, in order to input them in the form.
I'm Dominic.gm. I tried to make it easy for this stuff. I don't have anybody else's. Chris.
Mine is
Chris Bidenios.
Dan, thanks for hosting. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank
You're,
you.
you're welcome, of course, and thank you so much for joining and sharing your work too. I'm really excited to see his website.
Yeah,
And of course,
thank
the
you.
election too on Saturday. Looking forward to it very much.
I gotta get inducted somehow.
Cool. Thanks.
Not expected, etc.
No, it's reset. I can't see the old message.
Okay.
Anything that happened in the chat when we were in the room, we see.
All
But
right.
when we leave the room, we don't see any of the chat there.
Okay. All right.
So
Okay. Good.
that would have to come. That would be in the chat log from that room. So when it's recorded, that chat log could be added in to
All
the
right,
mix.
fair
You
enough.
know, it's
Okay.
just a
I'll be
text
quiet
file.
now. Let you guys take over. I'm a visitor.
So hello everybody, and I'll just answer and welcome Dario quick. Dario, we're going to do an Eden induction with Jorge, but I guess you didn't see.
And I think people arriving here are not going to be able.
I'm not sure who's speaking there, but just to briefly respond to Dario, welcome and great to see you here. Although I think that Jorge was already inducted by Chris and somebody else yesterday.
yeah, I've been inducted already, Dario. Thank you. I left you a message on Discord.
Okay,
Chuck,
cool.
Chuck, can we induct me right now? Is that convenient? Is that doable?
Patrick isn't here.
Ah, okay. Is
He's
that
on the contract. We'd have to redo the whole induction side of the contract.
okay?
I'd reach out to him here.
I guess that's not easy. All right. We'll figure it out a little later this morning.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, bro.
Yeah, Dan, what's your EOS account?
My EOS account is just Dan.
Okay. And Perry, did you put yours anywhere?
I did.
I
Mhm.
missed it.
You want me to repost it?
Yeah, sure, please.
Can everybody please post your rankings from your room into the Zoom chat? And also using the tool that Vlad built that we should link again here.
I added it to my name, Jorge, but it's just Dominic.gm. But I renamed myself in the participants. And if there's anybody in here who did not participate in the rooms, just please put your EOS account in there. You'll get an NFT also. Brock just dropped in. You guys all missed it. We were the early birds here, finished our room 1 early, and we chatted with Brock for about 5 minutes. He's hunting for pirate treasure in New England right now.
Interesting.
But he just wanted to say hi to everybody and congratulate us on work through the process. And yeah, he's just happy to be part of the process and want to drop in and say hi.
Cool, awesome, and sounds like a fun story that he is searching for treasure in New England. I think you said I saw somebody join named Unicorn. Was that Brock?
Yes.
Okay.
That was him.
Okay, interesting. I wasn't sure. I didn't click the admit button because I didn't know who he was, but I'm glad that somebody did, and that's cool that he joined. And I hope you find this treasure.
It's exciting, the turnout, and yep.
Perry, I'm getting an error on your account. GRAHAPP and then 4 A's, correct?
It should be 5. Did I screw that up?
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Unless I'm reading it wrong, which is possible.
Okay, I guess I missed a. No,
Is it 4 A's or 5 A's? 5.
it's 5 A's. I typed it right. Ah,
Yep. I'm just
Put my glasses on. Yeah,
I'm just-
five A's following the double P's.
And once I submit it, it's just still kind of showing me the fields. It doesn't give like the transaction's good, I'm good. On the app, the web app.
Are you referring to my account specifically or just in
No,
general?
just general.
Okay.
Like I signed with Anchor and then it kind of goes back to the same screen.
It's not working.
I wanted to point out while we're here that the tool for submitting the transaction for the consensus is on mobile is not completely responsive. It's the layout is showing from one point to the rest. It's like cutting one part in the left side. I took a screenshot of it. I can share it later in the Discord.
Dominic, are you having some kind of error?
No, I'm good now. I just wasn't, it doesn't give you that like concluding thing, you know? It signs and
Yeah.
just sort of goes back to the fields instead of being like, so, you know, used to like a screen that says like, yeah, you're done. That's all. No worries. If you try to do it again, it just says, sorry, buddy, you already voted once, so.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that. If
Yeah, I tried it. So there you go. Have guinea pig. It just says, sorry, friend, you already voted once or something like that. Oh boy. All right. That was interesting.
well, I guess I'll bring up kind of. I guess we can start a discussion here. I'm just curious, kind of here, who's all running, and I think it would be good if we kind of rally behind. I announced kind of my group. I'm going to go as far as I can, and I'm not going to give my vote up to anyone who's not willing to fund the Eden Fractal. Ideally, I would like to see an Eden Fractal member as a chief delegate going into this next election. So yeah, I'd be curious to hear anyone else's thoughts and opinions on this.
Could you repeat that?
I'll be
last,
doing that.
that last
I
statement?
hadn't
Sorry.
said it before. Actually, I said it in my breakout room.
I was just
What's
going to
the
ask Felix.
idea
Oh,
that this thing needs funding?
Yeah, so I'm going to be advocating to run as far as I can get, and if I make the chief delegate, make it to chief delegate, I'm going to be using those funds to fund this Eden Fractal and then potentially other fractals that could come out. Similarly, I see the Eden Fractals being like the circles that have been proposed, but yeah, I don't want to give my vote to anyone who's not willing to support this Eden Fractal and yeah, so forth.
Gotcha. Is
Um,
that the expected like avenue for funding for this, or is there anything on the table to potentially like petition the ENF directly, or are there any other options on the table that have been spoken of?
As of right now, it seems relevant with the election being this Saturday. That's the first primary focus, and then we'll see what happens, and then from there.
I'm not privy to the discussion if there's been any other talk of any kind.
Yeah, there hasn't been talk in specific, I think, but it's certainly something that we can explore. I think would make a lot of sense for the ENF as well as Eden itself. I think that I agree with what Felix is saying. I think that the Eden Fractal is the most helpful. I mean, there's so many exciting things going on in EOS and Eden, but I think that the Eden Fractal and fractal governance and fractal cooperation is the most helpful thing for Eden and EOS and the world in many ways. So I'll be very in support of helping the Eden Fractal and the Eden election. And I think that it'd be great for many people to do it. And with more funding, we can do a lot of things.
I think my concern with that has been dilution, right? Because from my perspective, Eden itself doesn't really have enough funding I hope that ultimately we're going to be more creative collectively, and instead of sort of devouring one another's funding, we actually get access to, you know, kind of Fractal's own funding, so that it's add-on. So I think Eden needs a lot more too, you know, like both groups would need a lot more and could get a lot more done if they had it.
Yep, that's also true too. And I think another thing that's important too is I don't think that funding is really necessary very much. I think that we have our respect token and we're a DAO, and we don't necessarily need EOS or any other funding to propel our growth. We can create value, and if people respect what we're doing in this group, then eventually the respect we have, that can be worth something. Kind of like how Bitcoin started. It had no funding, but people respected it. And there's been tremendous growth in just the Fractal Genesis group without any funding for the most of the participants. But also I see lots of people have their hands raised. I think maybe Charles was first, or maybe Oscar.
Yeah. See, I was thinking, this is the first time I've been part of Eden ever since the first election, but I hadn't really run for any place whatsoever in the past. Now this time, however, I thought that it would be helpful to actually do for the first round at least. And you know, my goal is to, the way I see it is, in Eden, every delegate and every chief delegate has an active role. So they are always contributing, and they have not only the role to do that, but they also have the responsibility to do that. Now, as for Eden members, they don't really have any responsibility, rather than just holding that people accountable. Now, however, in this Eden Fractal, we get to have every member contribute something, and people from the community as well. So we have the power to give people an active role in the Eden Fractal. So my idea is 50% of the funds come to the Eden Fractal, and the other 50% going in a 40% and 10%, 40% to Pomelo grants, and 10% to the grant of the Eden Special Foundation. I still have to write this down and have a pitch and everything, but that's at least the way I'm planning to go for it.
Okay, cool. Sounds great. Thank you, Oscar. It was a little bit difficult to hear the background noise, but I think I understood everything. And yeah, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. And maybe Charles, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thanks. So to answer Felix's questions, yeah, I think I would be running for the Eden Fractal specifically. Normally I run for your support, but this time around, I'm pretty much a concerned citizen at this point. I have some concerns that I want to express during the elections, and I'm also fully representing this fractal here. And I'm wanting to represent it as a fractal. I mean, I love the work we're doing here, and I want to present myself and see if people can vote for myself to represent their ideas, considering that my idea is that this fractal should keep a maximum of what is described in the Fractalist white paper. I love how it works. I love the simplicity of it, of having a fractal, an Eden fractal that is based on these principles. I love how the teams work. So you don't have to build a government with many circles or very formal, really, government for Eden. You just have to implement the Fractal process, because then the people can form their teams. People that can work in marketing can work together. Everyone with a different scale set can just form teams and work together very simply. I love the simplicity of it. That's just it. Anyone can join a team there afterwards. If the funding is well distributed to the fractals, then it works even better. But that's my point. I joined the discussion earlier here today. There was talk about Jesse to keep the breaking rooms between the different circles. So people from a circle from marketing would stay in breakout rooms from marketing, etc. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about all that. I kind of just love the simplicity of the white paper, having a whole fractal with a shared idea of benefiting the EOS ecosystem. and having just that Fractal with many teams inside that work just flawlessly by themselves. Second concern I have that I want to express and see what people think of it during the elections, if it gains support. I've not heard much about it from the chief delegates, and maybe I just missed a reunion about this or a current discussion on it. But it's always been my opinion that a great concern of our community, the EOS community as a whole, would be to see in the long term if we can get to elect BPs through the Fractal process, through the Fractal democracy process, keeping half with the proof of stake, keeping the other half elected through our mechanism here at Eden. And I haven't heard much talk about it. I'm constantly on the social networks now that I work with your support. And yeah, I don't get the feeling that we're ever going to be stopped calling, people are not going to stop calling us a cartel until we do that, until we have really proven that we have a democratic way of electing VPs that really benefit our ecosystem, that are there to support us, that are there to provide devs and workforce to sustaining Eden and our government, etc. So these are my main concerns. And this time around, during the Eden elections, I'm going to be representing our Fractal to see if other people have the same concerns, just see what everyone thinks about it. And that's just it. Thanks.
Cool. Sounds great. Thank you very much for the thoughts, Charles. Very well stated as always. And I agree the importance of democratic governance with EOS. I don't know who had their hands raised up next. I think maybe it was Jorge. I'm not sure if it was Felix. Is Jorge?
Yeah. First of all, I support the need to strengthen this Fractal. So I support both Felix and Charles. And I also support myself. I want to be a Eden candidate too. I, however, don't intend to go all the way to chief delegate. I am not. I don't have the time to have a weekly meeting, and I honestly don't think I have enough trajectory within this community to be a chief delegate. So I don't intend to go all the way there. But I do want to get funding for these simulation efforts that I'm trying to start. So yeah, I wanted to say that once again. Thank you all.
Sweet. Thank you, Jorge. Yeah, so it's really exciting hearing, we have members in here that's going to run. And so hopefully, we get several delegates and yeah, my goal is I will push to get to the chief delegate. And if we have several members, and I think that's awesome, because if we have delegates, like I would like to work together too, to address first Dominique's point about kind of like, I guess, when it comes to like, obviously to get to the level or get to the final stage, I'm going to have to take everyone's considerations that are in the breakout rooms of what they're wanting to use the funding for. It is my belief that I think that this is the way to grow both Eden and EOS. This also kind of, I guess, would maybe address maybe a little bit of Charles' point. We had a really interesting conversation in my breakout group with Dwayne, just about like the possibilities of first off, this whole, when we get more funding, what that does is that now we're getting EOS out into people's hands. People can come here and they can earn EOS. There's no better way to get crypto than to earn it rather than having to buy it. That's layer one. That's just the basic layer. Now, if we want to incentivize Eden growth with the NFT side of things, with what Chuck is doing, now we can incentivize with the unique ways to do things with NFTs to get people to sign up as an Eden member to be able to claim these Eden NFTs that can be backed with a little bit more heavier side of EOS based off the token distribution. So there's a lot of unique ways. I see this being, this is what I think is going to drive and really bring both EOS and Eden. It has all the potential, and that's why I'm really passionate and going to, push pretty hard. And it's just exciting to see, we've got other people in this group too with that, and this helps. We have a voice here, and it's going to be reflected in the election coming up. And yeah, I'm excited to see what happens.
Felix, can I ask? Oh, I guess I need to raise my hand. Sorry.
Well, you already started, so if you want to just ask your quick, Perry, if it's a quick question, or if not, then I suppose we can go to Dwayne or Lenny.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Felix what he saw as his ideal configuration of Eden fractally relative to Eden itself, relative to ENF. Where would he like to see that long term? Relative to inflation?
Inflation to,
in other words, I'll just say it more directly. Does he see the long term that Eden fractally be the primary recipient of inflation the way that ENF is now, or at the very minimum, the way Eden is? Or does he see Eden fractally as asking for funds from Eden or asking for funds from ENF? What do you envision?
So I think first, if we capture enough funding to start to get traction, if we start getting people outside of EOS coming to show up just to get EOS, that to me gives me more to come to the ENF and others to ask for more funding, because now we're driving adoption to EOS outside of our like our echo chamber. With what Charles kind of brought up about the BP, this is tough because, I see why the chief delegates don't directly talk too much about it, because it's like biting the hand that's feeding you with the ENF. But that's what's awesome about what we have going on with the Eden respect tokens, because we get strong enough. We're able to take this Eden respect token and we can launch our own chain. And like I said, if the numbers are there, that's what's the most important thing. If we're driving adoption, that Eden respect token can allow us to have that independence. Ideally, I think there's going to be some tension and pullback. I think, my hopes too is that, the EOS, network, so the block producers and the ENF want to try to democratize things and make things a little bit more independent, but it's going to be, no one wants to give out that power right away. And so there's got to be, you got to have a little bit of pull as well. So I see this as the opportunity to be able to kind of force our hand a little bit, because if we are bringing in members, we are showing the value, then it's like, okay, well, look what we got going on here. We're now becoming less dependent on you guys. It's up to you guys to continue to allow us to slowly integrate and get more weight, because this is another thing though too, I talked about in our Eden Town Hall show, was the increase from 5% to 15%. We need to be thinking a lot about also our power and influence within EOS, and our current treasury is nothing compared to the overall circulation. And so we don't have any weight when it comes to voting and block producers. And so to ask to increase to 15% rather than go and ask the ENF for more funding with what we've done, with what the chief delegates have done in this last bit, like, to me, that's enough to ask for more funding, a top up, rather than messing with our inflation. And then especially with where we're at with the price and with catalyst events coming in August and in September, it just doesn't make sense to deplete our treasury. We should be topping it up now while the price is lower, because it's going to be harder to get more EOS if the price does appreciate, because if we're thinking in terms of dollars.
Cool. I think Perry wants to say something in response, but we do have a lot of hands raised too. So unless it's quick, maybe we should go on to Dwayne, because Dwayne has hands up for a while.
I've got lots of questions, but yeah, let Dwayne go ahead. I could go on for hours.
Okay, sounds good. And we'll have many hours to continue going on, Perry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll keep it quick. I'm going to be running as well, funding to come back to this fractally, specifically to keep the awesome NFTs rolling. Thanks so much, Chuck. There was a discussion about, should it be a prerequisite to be in the Eden Fractal that you are an Eden member? And I think instead of restricting anything or penalizing anybody, it's easier to reward people more if they do have an Eden membership. So there's some fun things that, as a group we can think about on maybe how you blend up. If we have these NFTs and you can blend them for participating in this meeting, maybe if you also hold an Eden NFT, and those NFTs are not being utilized right now. So if those can come into play, not utilized, they're utilized as our badge that this is verifying who I am with my account. So they are serving a function. But if we can put it more into gameplay, that if I'm holding that and I have some of these fractal NFTs, maybe that's, just gives me something more. I also like the idea of this being a fun way for people to express what they're passionate about. So people can see this, that there is value in governance. And like Dominic was saying in the beginning, is there value in governance? I think, if someone's writing the story here, we'd look at every single thing that's been advertised, from the ENF down to Eden, to these fractals, to the multi-chain consortium of EOSIO chains, are putting action forward because they're coming to consensus. So, to kind of show this governance as a service almost, but also using this platform to show the rest of the world what people are passionate about. So its own little advertisement in itself, that people are talking about their projects. Maybe if we're successful, each one of these projects has its own team. It ends up having its own team NFT, and maybe that NFT in your wallet could be used to split us into different groups, or just, kind of like what Jesse was saying, do we get more focused on having just a marketing group? Playing off the NFTs and participation and getting people into groups and really fractaling this out could be one way of doing that. So just some thoughts. I'm not sure. I'll wait to see who's in my group as a chief delegate. If there's someone passionate and really going to be striving for the best of Eden and EOS, I'll give him my vote. If I come to that position and see there's no one there, I'll put my hat in the ring to go all the way. Thanks.
Cool. Sounds great. Thank you so much for the great thoughts, Dwayne. Really appreciate it. And I don't know who had their hands up first, when it was Lenny or Chuck. I think it might have been Lenny.
I believe you pointed my way.
Okay.
Okay. Now I just want to say, you might have, those of you that are on Fractal might have noticed that I'm not joined up with any team, even if some of them does interest me. I'm here with Eden Fractally as well, and similarly, I'm actually trying to be, as an individual, non-aligned and neutral, and that's partly because I see as my greatest service to the EOS community is actually to stay neutral and try to develop this recaps what I think I can make it be, to save time for a lot of people, so they can get more effective and stay abreast with what's happening. But then you got to keep your neutrality. And once it's building up, if it goes well, then of course more people, more qualified people would have to come in as well to help with this, and also beyond the EOS. That's my primary driver. So I would not be pushing for, like in this case, Eden Fractally or anything. But I might very well, of course, choose a delegate from my group. And if I stand up as myself as a delegate or not, I'm like Dwayne in that case. Depends on who's in the room a bit. Thanks.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks, Lenny. I think it's up to you, Chuck.
Yeah, I don't see a disconnect between the Eden Fractal here and everything else that's going on in Eden. And this isn't a unique process. This is the Eden process, and this process can be used to reward in every circle that we have. Like we've talked about the problem of mixing higher value monetary work with lower value monetary work. Like putting developers in the same room as people who tweet. And that's the reason why you want to differentiate. That's why we have professions. We differentiate professions so that they can be in their own little community, and then have an accurate valuation on their work, basically, and they can defend themselves and pick themselves up together. And what I like about Jesse's proposal in general is it's almost like forming a union of
blockchain workers, and we're all going to have different skills, but we're all going to come together for one purpose. But when we can create little sub-communities, it's not even sub-communities, it's like we're going to be bouncing in and out of these circles of interest depending on what we're interested and depending on what we're wanting to do on a certain day. Like a developer might be playing, participating in the tech circle, and we like ideally we're going to have teams working together in an open source, transparent way to update Eden's code and to write software for us. Ideally, Lily, hold on. Just
there's so many birds.
I know there's so many birds surrounding our house. Yeah, like we should pick this up as a process. We should pick this up as a process that we use in everyday life, in everything that we do. And if the individual circles that we have, for example, our NFT circle, a few of us here are in it, but we're talking about being able to reward people for work that they do with badges. It'll be non-transferable badges that you're going to accumulate, and then depending on the budget of the circle that you're in, or depending on the budget of Eden in general, or the NFT circle or whatever, we'd be able to don't let him out there, it's raining. Got a big furry dog. Yeah, depending on the if we have pools of resources in these different circles, they can pay out to using the Fractally method, using the Eden method, whatever we want to call this. What we call it is kind of irrelevant, but I there is software coming to do all this also, which is another reason why Eden needs to be playing around with apps, and it needs to be creating partnerships with different apps to do all of these things. We may, it would make a lot more sense for us to license a software package to do all of our procurement and bidding and jobs and leadership and all that kind of stuff. It would be better for us to license software than to build it at this point. There is software coming out, as we know, in the name Fractally, that's going to allow us to do all of this distribution of the stuff that we're doing right now manually and ad hoc. The software is coming for that. We can integrate that as a community. But and speaking to the point of creating a political not creating a political crisis, but addressing the governance crisis that people perceive in EOS, like the fact that we're getting funded by the network shows that the network is interested in democratic renewal. Like it's right here. It's right. Proof is in the pudding. Well, we can't go and start demanding things because we haven't really proven anything yet. We still have, fewer than 100 people coming out to elections a year in, and we have nothing to prove. We have nothing to stand on to demand anything. We can't say we're going to go and create our own chain, because it'll be like, okay, go ahead. There's so many different important interests in this network that, if we're going to start to get, aggressive about things, like we need to get aggressive about our own, or getting our own house in order. And I think what we're, I completely agree, Felix, that the Eden Fractal is something to run on, but I think we need to see this thing integrated in everything that we do in Eden. I think it needs to be integrated at every level, and that's what I would be in favor of. I'm done.
By this thing, Chuck, just to be clear, do you mean this process that we're doing here with like the meeting and
Here.
6 or?
Yeah. Just talking, identifying who's contributed value, and finding some way to distribute, because we've got 3 levels of distribution here. We've got distribution for everybody who shows up. We've got a distribution for everybody who gets ranked. We've got a distribution, we've got all these different ways of accounting, making sure people don't fall through the cracks. And on top of that, you don't have to be an Eden member, which is fantastic. This is a way to onboard people into Eden. This is a way to get people excited about using their EOS account. Once I have my stupid drop figured out, we will have a blockchain transaction through this. Vlad's tool, we used a blockchain transaction. The more stuff we do like that, the more we integrate EOS into our everyday life in Eden. That's what the network wants to see. That's what the network is going to reward. The more blockchain integrations we have, the happier they're going to be, because it's just us proving that we understand the world that we live in. And the world that we live in is the EOS network, and the whole community, all the way down to Telos and Wax and UX and everything. But then we're also, as Jesse wants to talk, like, we can also be a tool for other blockchains completely unrelated to EOS. We can be a democratic tool and a networking tool, all within Eden. And we don't, then our mission changes. Then our mission statement can be adapted, and that's something that we'll grow into. But we just need to keep running this process and make this like just really dissolve into every aspect of what we do in Eden.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that what this gets right is it does a better job of rewarding the various stakeholders. Right now, being a participant in Eden doesn't get you anything. You show up, and if you're just a voter, it's pride, basically, knowing that you contributed, which is fine, but it's nice for there to be rewards. I mean, human beings work off of incentive models. And just with what I've seen today, this would be great for, kind of integrating with this circles concept or something like it, right? And then having various teams that function and integrated in association with Eden kind of thing. And that's what I'm saying. And then we won't get as much dilution, right? And we can act as one voice when we advocate for greater funding, on our way up / work together on fundraising things if we decide. I mean, I've always been a big advocate that, we need to be self-funded ultimately. That may take 5 years, but I think we should be going that way if we want a truly independent governance organization. That's ideal. Not absolutely necessary, but ideal. Sorry, my voice is low. Must be my mic or something.
So able to hear Dominic. It was a bit low, but I was able to hear everything you said pretty clearly. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Was there anything else that you wanted to share there?
Oh no, I just maybe it's better now.
Yeah,
we just need. I've been saying this from the beginning. We had a vacuum of leadership early on that there wasn't a follow through from the original conceptual model. And then that's led to like now where you see people coming into Eden who really have no idea of what they joined for the most part. They just think it's like a fucking governance community. Without a coherent vision and a coherent culture, you spend so much bullshit time arguing with one another, that it becomes draining. And invariably it's going to turn people off, or at the very minimum, it's taking energy away from productive pursuits. So that's really what I want to see is coherence. I think that's just so important.
Great. Thank you very much, Dominic, and Chuck as well. I agree. There's so many great points here and super inspiring. I think Felix was on his hands as Mike. So I don't know if Felix want to say something, and also Jorge and Perry had their hands up too. And then also just one thing I want to throw in real quick too, just with regard to what Chuck was saying about how it can be helpful, like to buy tooling and stuff like that. I agree. And like the Fractal team is building great tools. Also, Haifa could potentially be helpful for some things that we're doing. But then also, like Vlad built this great tool. James Mart also helped build a great tool too. And I think that this fractal method, I think like Dominic and maybe Jesse or several people were saying, like this can be helpful for many people. And I think that EOS and EOS.io will want tools that are built for this process as well. So that's another avenue that we could explore over the future. But anyway, I don't know if Felix or Perry or Jorge wants to speak next.
Go ahead, Jorge.
Yes, thank you. Well, I wanted to say that first, this process of this fractal democracy process, this second version, I find is one of the most valuable things I've found in the whole crypto space. Really, if we look, for example, at this community, this Eden Fractal community, I feel, and I would like to quantify it, but I already feel that we are creating more value. We are, as a community, as a little micro community, we are having a higher output of value than, for example, the whole Eden community. And that's one point. Second point is that, for example, today in my breakout room, we have 5 really high quality contributors, and it felt pretty unfair. The people that, the person that was last wasn't really like 1/6 of the contribution of the person who was first. But this second problem could be solved if we just bring more people in. If in any breakout room, instead of having 6 really top contributors, we have a more distributed level of contributions, that problem will be solved. And we tie points 1, if we tie points 1 and 2, we are having a really big output of value as measured per person, with the problem we have of having packed groups of really high contributors. If we could make this respect token, this Eden token, more desirable for the rest of the community, so that more people come, so that within our breakout rooms, we don't have this high concentration of, and really difficult to differentiate concentration of contributions, then we will have solved several aspects at once. So all these points lead me to Felix point that yes, we have improved ourselves, but somehow we already are outputting more value per person. So yeah, I would say we have a point by asking more financing and bringing more people and focusing on strengthening this fractal democracy protocol within the bigger Eden and EOS ecosystem. Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, thank you, Jorge.
I'd like to respond to what Chuck was saying about, and also it bears on what Felix was saying in terms of the orientation between Eden, the group Eden, and Eden Fractally, and ENF and inflation. I believe that the correct configuration is to put something like Eden Fractally, which in my eyes I see as the purest form of election, at the highest order, with the least amount of baggage, the least amount of centralization, the least amount of circles, and simply a decision body that can fund Eden on EOS, that can fund Helios, the foundation, that can fund other groups that choose or choose not to be more or less centralized. I don't think that we should be accepting the configuration where Eden Fractally is subordinate to Eden on EOS, which is subordinate to ENF. I don't think that's where we should go. I think we're basically continuing the centralization of our chain and the misgovernance of our chain if we go down that road. So I suppose what I'm saying is I support what Felix is saying, And I would go even farther and say that at some point, once we have enough confidence and the Fractally software is developed far enough, that it supersede ENF and ultimately the block producers themselves. Now that's not today, but I think that's where we need to go, is where an elected body does not have circles, that is funding different, potentially of different degrees, centralized bodies. That pure group is at the very top, closest to inflation. I think that's what will produce the most democratic change. So that's what I wanted to say. That's very different than I think what Chuck is suggesting, and then what the ENF is supporting. But I think that's where we need to go. Thank you.
Good, thank you, Perry. Yeah, I want to address what kind of Chuck was getting at. Oh, shoot. My bad. Yeah, so yeah, I'm not trying to be like aggressive, and I'm not saying that that's what you're saying, Chuck. But I can see, like, my point is we should be able to go to the ENF, and I don't see why we need to get more clear on the table of, like, basically, if we're needing funding to support these initiatives that we have rolled out, if they look good, then I don't see why the ENF doesn't fund it. Why do we need to go improve, in a sense, any more than we already have? And I'm not saying that because I do think, the ENF and Eden, I mean, the EOS block producers are supporting the idea of making us more independent as a network, through slowly, giving us more independence. But with that being said, for me, the way that Eden becomes an influence on the network is we have to have more stake in the network. 200,000 EOS isn't it. And so for me, I just would like to have more clear terms of, like, okay, fine. Right now, these are kind of what we're rolling out as far as, like, what we'd like to see. But if the funding isn't there because it's got cut in third, and we can't, like, we're supposed to mess with, like, the design of our system and change it to 15%. That's where I, like, kind of draw a little hesitancy of, like, why doesn't the ENF, why wouldn't they be willing to top it off? And like I said, this is starting to speculate on what the ENF will do. We don't know until we actually ask them. I would like to see, if they would want us to tap into our treasury, then what is being offered as far as, like, the top up? Are we talking in dollar value, or we're talking about EOS? Because if we're looking at this next Eden term, we're going into to August, September, which is the catalyst, like, what I believe could be a big catalyst event for the price of EOS. So if the top up is going to be in terms of the US dollar or the fiat currency amount, we're not going to get as much as if that happens now, with the price being lower. And so that's kind of where, I guess, like, my headspace is like, we need enough funds to be able to make this legitimate, for it to be worth our time. And for me, if we have enough funding, to be able to, like, basically have enough to be able to bring very passive people just to show up, and that's onboarding people, I think brings a lot of value. But we have to have the funding for it. How can we grow if we don't have anything to incentivize growth? Like, it's very hard to get people into crypto because of all especially now with all the stuff that's, like, bad about crypto. The market's down. Everyone's not in a bullish mindset. If you're giving up opportunity to earn rather than having to buy, the buy-in is a lot more easier and less frictionless. And so that's kind of where I stand. And so, yeah, I agree. I'm not trying to come off as aggressive, and I'm not, like I said, I hope that's not what Chuck was saying, but I can kind of feel like, maybe when I'm kind of talking from a place of passion, but I am also in the tense, or in the state of mind of, like, we need to, it's going to be a little tug back and forth, but we have to open the discussions. We can't just keep speculating of what the ENF is going to do unless we actually ask them. like, and that's kind of where I stand. Like if I make it to chief delegate, or I would like to see the chief delegates is first approach the ENF before messing with the initial design of the 5% to 15%. That to me is just, I think is bad practice. Like we're allowing us to change the treasury drawdown, and then that's messing with future delegates. And I think that's a part of the system that doesn't need to, that needs to be locked in and stayed, because it's a contingency fund. And yeah, I don't know. And I kind of went like, I guess I'm not as like clear with my message, but I hope that kind of made some sense.
Yeah, it sounds great, Felix. That made a lot of sense. I'd be curious. A lot of those points were in response to Chuck's. I'd be curious to hear if Chuck had any thoughts about that, but it all made sense to me. And I agree generally. I think that you make a lot of great points, but there are some things that I'd like to just touch upon quickly with both what you said there, Felix, and then a couple other things that I just wrote some notes down that other people said. So one, Felix, you mentioned like it being worth our time and like how can we grow if we don't have anything to incentivize growth, and you mentioned like needing funding. And as I was saying before, I don't think that we need funding. I mean, I think that funding will be very helpful to help grow it and help grow it faster. But I think without much funding now, we're here and we're having these great conversations. We've been doing it for the past several weeks and so forth. And many times people don't need funding to just hang out with friends and also work together and so forth, especially when people can see a long-term benefit. So I think that like what's worth our time is like the relationships that we're building and the fun that we're having. We're also making cool videos, and then also we're earning Eden respect. And that can be kind of like Bitcoin. Maybe if people respect what we're doing, like the Eden respect can be potentially very valuable if people respect what we're doing. So like we have something that can bring the community together, and that everybody has shared upside in if we do well. So I do think that we don't need funding, but it will be very helpful. And then also just briefly, I don't know if you want to respond to that, Felix, real quick, or if I should respond to the other stuff. Or
yeah, if I could hop in real quick.
Okay.
So I don't disagree, but I also kind of disagree. It is easier to, like, I can bring in my friends, my family to come participate in this. I'm like, hey, I'm bullish on EOS. These are all the reasons, but you don't need to buy, come earn but we have to pay for their time. And that time is going to be paid through additional funding. And that's why I think it's important, because that does really bring people outside of crypto. We're in an echo chamber. So I don't disagree with what you're saying as far as we don't necessarily need funding. We do find value in this community and the network that we're growing. But if we want, more mainstream adoption, we need funding. We need to incentivize people by paying for their time, even if it's just a little bit. And that's kind of where I guess I would have my counterpoint.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Yeah, thanks for providing that extra color, Felix. And I agree with what you're saying. I think it's super helpful. I don't really agree with the word need, but I suppose need to make it as successful as possible, and need for certain situations to invite friends and family. I think that is super helpful. So I'm in agreement. We should seek funding and so forth. But I think that even if we didn't, that we could still be highly successful as well. And then maybe I'll just touch upon a couple other points. Perry also said something about like, you made good points how you think that like it should be democratic, the places that are closest to the most inflation. And I agree. I think that I agree that the fractal process and the Eden fractal, it's the most democratic process that we have on EOS. And obviously we're small now, but I think that we should foster the growth. I don't think there's any concern of Eden fractal being subordinate to anyone, because we're a true DAO. We're independent with our own respect token. So even if somebody didn't want to give us funding or something like that, like we are independent. And then just two other quick points. Chuck made a lot of great points, and also Dominic, about just doing this fractal process often. And Chuck mentioned like what to call the process. I think maybe call it the Eden fractal process might be a good idea. I'm open to different things, but that might be a good idea. And I totally agree with that sentiment. And then also Dominic mentioned ideas about, he shared a lot of good comments about KPI measurement in the chat that I would encourage everybody to read in more detail. But just some quick thoughts about that. I think that like the process itself is meant to be subjective, and I don't think that we can ever put an objective KPI on what we rank each other by, that we have to. That's kind of the beauty of it, that it works in a subjective way. But I agree that we should have more objective KPIs to help show what Eden Fractal is doing, what the Eden community is doing. I've actually been working on that after Dario was asking about that last week. I've been working on, trying to put some stats and stuff on that, on summary of what we're doing with Eden Fractal, and I'm hoping to share it in the coming days. Yeah, for external stakeholders. Yeah, exactly. Cool. Thanks for clarifying that, Dominus and Dominic. And yep, I don't know if Perry wants to go next or
Just real quick, I want to say, glad to hear that you don't believe that Eden Fractally should or is subject to being subordinate to any other organizations, because it is by definition a democratic process. It does have a dilemma though, if it does start to accept funds from ENF, and the whole community has that dilemma is of becoming dependent. So I do hear from time to time, and the sentiment that we should be pleasing the ENF, gaining favor with ENF, doing right. I think we should resist that, and most of all, this organization being the fractal version of that. So there are, if for example, if you are if Eden on EOS was a separate organization and it was and Eden Fractally was at the very top, and Eden EOS wanted to please ENF, then that seemed to be fine. But the organization that is at the very top, closest to inflation, shouldn't be concerned about pleasing the ENF. I think we have that backwards. So I just want to put that value out there in the community. I think it's an important value that we not seek to please the ENF. We seek to please the community and our democratic process.
Thank you for sharing this perspective, Perry. I'll just, I know Jorge has his hands up raised, but I'll just briefly respond to that and then also just give a quick logistical note as well. So I think that we should seek to please the ENF and we should seek to please the EOS community. I mean, the ENF are leaders and a big part of the EOS community. I don't think that there's any risk or in any way that we should be dependent upon them. And I don't think that we can be. I mean, it'd be great to receive funding, but as I was saying before, like we're a DAO, we have our own respect. As Felix was saying, that respect could be used to form a new chain if we want to and so forth. So I think that our goal is to help Eden and help EOS, and helping ENF is a part of that. But obviously if ENF was not acting in the best interest of EOS, then I think that our ultimate allegiance should be more so to Eden and EOS. But I think ultimately our allegiance should be to this community specifically. Like we're aiming to help Eden and EOS, but I think that the first and foremost thing is that we're aiming to help the people who are on these calls in the Eden Fractal. And then we're also aiming to help Eden and EOS as much as possible while we're doing that, I think, while still not being dependent upon it, because we have our own respect and our own community, our own DAO. And then, yeah, I'm interested to hear more thoughts from Jorge and Felix and everybody, but I also just want to give a quick logistical note that I'm going to be leaving in 4 minutes for another meeting. I encourage everybody to stick around. There's lots of great conversation, but I will need to make somebody a new host when I leave. And also I would request that whoever becomes the host or whoever else is here could please record the meeting after I leave so that I and others will be able to listen to it in the future. Would anybody like to be the host? I know that Charles was the host last week. Would you like to be the host again, Charles, or would anybody else like to be the host?
I'd have to leave out as I'd appreciate someone else taking over this time around.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Charles. Is there anybody else who's planning to stick around?
I can be the host for a while.
Oh, okay. I think I saw Chuck volunteer for first.
Okay.
Okay. And I'll make you the co-host, Jorge. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, and please do record. That would be very helpful.
Okay.
And Jorge, I'm making you the host right now. I'm just kind of trying to figure out. Okay, got it. And then also, I'll just say too, before I go, just once again, just thanks everybody so much. I really appreciate it, as I think everybody here in the group does. And this is super exciting and super inspiring, these conversations. So yeah, thank you so much, everybody.
Jorge, were you wanting to go? I had a quick note. I also will have to be leaving here shortly.
Oh, and one thing I'll say too is that now that I'm not the host, Chuck is the host, so now I can't make Jorge the host. So if Chuck would like to make Jorge the host, or I guess Felix is also co-host too.
Okay,
I
I'm
don't think I have
fine.
any
Chuck
co-host.
being the host.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So I guess it's my turn now.
Sure.
Yeah. So I want to make the case that this process is already proving itself. And I have plenty of examples to show for that. For example, in my breakout room today, Perry's contribution, Perry's Shana's contribution, looks something truly awesome. And what is he doing that for? Maybe $10, which is what he will receive for worth of EOS from this week. So this process already is extracting more value from people than what monetarily that contributions are worth. And the way I see this is functioning is that it is shifting the incentive for people to be on the Telegram chats creating drama and actually putting his hands and his mind to work to produce something. So I'll make the case that as a prototype, and given the resources that we have given, this process has already proven himself. And the same drama that we find on EOS Telegram channels, you find them everywhere else in the crypto space, on every community. I've been part of BitShares community, STEM community, Litecoin community. It's everywhere. So we do really have here, we really do have here is something that can be remarkable, I think. So I'll invite you guys to not be afraid of go for more or ask for more and focus on strengthening this community. And I totally support Perry's point of trying to direct this community to empower itself up to the point of getting control of block producing. I think this process is already outputting more value than most of processes in the whole crypto ecosystem, outside from EOS even. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Jorge. I agree too a lot with seeing the value that that we have created here. And, you know, to me, it's a balance between making a legitimate case to the ENF for additional funding, but also being independent in our decisions with how we handle our treasury. You know, our true contingency, though, is our respect token. It also gives us negotiating weight as we start to build and show the value that many of our current members already see. And so, yeah, for me, I just think we need to open up the discussions with the ENF before we start really tinkering with the design of our you know, the Eden treasury drawdown, in my opinion. But because to me, when we start doing that, it starts to raise questions for me, and it's raising questions with other members in this community, obviously, because the discussions are going like, well, why are we having to do what the ENF is doing? There is not what the ENF is doing, what the ENF wants. There is kind of a sentiment there that it's like, we need to please the ENF. And like I said, to a certain extent, it's not pleasing. It's us providing a legitimate case to getting additional funding to be independent and being able to see from the ENF side. So it helps the people who are having these concerns. The ENF has the opportunity to show, hey, we've got your back. We are willing to work towards democratize, like further making this an independent network. But you also have to, you know, you can't just ask. We have, like, I see the ENF's point of view too, right? You can't just give out free money because that's not efficient. And And they're looking at the overall success of the network, and so it's going to be a balance of the two. But it's also, we do have to apply some pressure to the ENF too. They're not the king. If they are, then this whole system is wrong. But they are an important decision maker, but Eden is an organization too that ideally I think it is to replace the ENF at some point, to have the influence on the EOS block producer selection and potentially also a distribution of the inflation, or at least having, we need to have, the network needs to have some way to be able to talk about how we move as the EOS network as a whole. And that's what I see Eden being, is the way to empower and voice a collective community of all EOS stakeholders.
If I can just clarify one thing, and I say it a lot, but Eden is not funded by the ENF. Eden is funded by the network. The funding doesn't come from the ENF. The funding comes from grants.eos.io. And the ENF is authorized to give a recommendation, like the network trusts the ENF's recommendations, but Eden should have its shit together well enough so that it can go and propose an MSIG directly to the network. If we're talking about not wanting to be pleasing the ENF, and I completely agree with that, and if you looked at the way that the chief delegates acted, we didn't even talk to the ENF, like literally at all, until about 3 weeks ago. And that was to figure out like logistics, because our full intention was to use the Eden treasury to pay for Eden's needs, and then to petition the network to top us up. What we've accomplished a lot, and right now the ENF is going to be paying for that work. But the ideal situation, as expressed by the ENF, is, I mean, this is Eve's recommendation on how we should be managing ourselves. If Eden needs something done, it uses its resources to get it done. We sort out how to use our treasury to get shit done. And then the network sees that we've got shit done and they top us up. That's the ideal situation for the ENF, because then them as a not-for-profit organization in Canada with responsibilities, they can't be favoring this amorphous, like non-legal entity. They don't want to be in that position. The network wants to fund Eden as this amorphous, supranational entity, and that this entity, there's a new book just out right now, on the 4th of July, The Network State, and it's required reading right alongside More Equal Animals. It's like More Equal Animals Part 2, and it talks about a decentralized state, and it's exactly what Eden is doing. And then eventually building up and purchasing and owning land around the world and becoming a recognized state, but decentralized to the whole world. Parcels of land owned by a DAO around the world. And that was where Eden was going from the beginning. But we don't get there by pleasing the ENF. We get there by doing our own thing and being independent and autonomous. But we can't just we can't just go and pretend that we have powers that we don't have. We just don't have the ability to influence the network politically at this point. And we just have to prove that we can do things, and then that political clout will collect. But right now we're talking about just very unpragmatic things when we talk about like turning the politics on its head and appointing block producers and everything. It's laughable from the perspective of the rest of the network. Like they look at us and they say, like, what are you guys dreaming about? What's the point of all of this? You just keep talking about this need to flip block production, but how? How does that happen? And one of the primary things that that the ENF has been talking about, and well, everybody, I mean, any sensible planner or worker or businessman is just pragmatism. You can only do what you can do. And we have a very limited toolbox to work with right now, and we have to do it. And yes, we have to dream about adding more tools to that toolbox, but we have to think about, like, you can't say I want a backhoe when you only have a toolbox that's this big. You just, it's not going to fit in there. You can't afford it. It's just not realistic. We can't go and redesign the network right now. We don't want to be the ones who redesign the network. We want the network to be redesigned through a surge of, you know, this democratic spirit maybe, but decentralization doesn't, as I wrote there, it's like we're in the creation business. We're creators, and creation is a centralized process. It comes from our noggins out into the real world, and that's pure centralization. And it's not a bad thing. Like, ideas are central. They're centralized in our heads, and we have to take these things and make them reality, and then make them, build them in such a way that they can be decentralized and spread out. Because if you think that decentralization is an ideal way of pursuing it, all it is you want this thing to be able to spread to every person, to be able to spread. That's what our definition of decentralization is. We want to share this with the world. We want to share. And we're not going to get there if we just keep talking about the big idea about flipping politics on its head. It's just not going to happen, and we'll just get laughed in the room.
You're absolutely right, Chuck.
I think Dan has thought about it quite a bit, and I think that we should consider what he has, how he's designing the practice, how he's designed in such a way that he's minimizing the let's call it the attack surface. Let's call it from the state. That's essentially what it's staying down to. It's essentially shut a decentralized organization down. He's oriented to the organization in such a way that it does fall within a legal framework, albeit not a usual one. He is trying to set us up in a positive way for that. I think we should consider and that the organization that controls the money reflecting that the minimal attack surface, and that organization can then fund more centralized organizations, like EOS, like like ENF, like Helios Foundation, like Helios Foundation, the one that's closest to the block production closest to inflation, closest to inflation. I believe we should pay attention. To those organizations. For example, to those organizations themselves don't have a block producers themselves don't have a what is protecting them. So what is protecting them? I think the closer we can get to that, we might not be able to get closest we quite to that. The closest we can get to that, the better.
Yeah, so I agree, Chuck, with it. So being pragmatic, pragmatic point of view though is I think it's more just about my point of view though is I think it's more just about talking about when we're going back to like talking about the treasury drawdown. I think it's more about the gesture from the network. I think it's more about the gesture from the network to the original dollar value that was initially to me that shows signs like okay, because to me that shows signs like okay, well you have been doing what have been working. It's not like we just took the money doing we have been working. It's not like we just took the money and done chief delegates, you Chuck, you guys have been doing good work. Chief delegates, you Chuck, all of us here, we're doing good work. All of us here, we're showing that even everyone that shows up showing that the elections, even everyone that shows up wants to do the elections, we're showing that hey, the thing is our price got cut in half. The thing is, our price got cut in half. and a third, and when you technically you can go in a third, and technically you can go to the block producers directly to the block producers, and yeah, so I do apologize to put everything on the ENF. Easy to kind of just put everything on the ENF, and really they're just the the middleman. And so you could go to the block producers, and you could go to the block producers, and I would just be like cutting a third. The token got cut in a third. Like, how is that on us? If anything, how is that on us? If anything, that may be a little bit on you guys not doing enough to keep the price. And that's an aggressive way to approach. And that's an aggressive way to approach. I'm just like not a good way to like devil's. I'm just like trying to play like devil's. Yeah, I guess to me it's more about the gesture. Yeah, I guess to me it's more about the gesture. I think because there are concerns. I think obviously, Perry concerns through has shown concerns through about we going a little bit too much about just going a little bit too much with we need to do what we need to do XYZ before we can get additional. We need to do XYZ before we can get additional funding. It just to me it just doesn't make sense. Like to mess with our treasury when that's messing to mess with our treasury when that's messing with our design. And I think it's more of a gesture. I think it's more of a gesture. If anything.
Felix, what's messing? Like, I don't understand or messing with our treasury. We were given a certain amount. My question would be, what's our case? Because we're saying we're doing good things, but again, without measurement, that means nothing. Right? If we can't prove it, it doesn't matter. I agree with you. By the way, I'm just saying, I'm taking the position of you've got people in a terrible market. We're going to ask them for money. Why? Why should we get one? We need to say together. That's what we need to say together. And those are good. Like for me, those are good. Like for me, if that point was presented, my argument is the block producers funded Eden. When the price was 3x, and the initial design was a 5% treasury drawdown. Now, if they are expecting us to change that, that is them dictating what we should do with our treasury, and that to me is, I think, is wrong because.
Why do you say they're expecting us? How do you know the block producers' view is to expect us to change our treasury? And the second question I'd ask you, Felix, is why don't you create a proposal? Why, like, if you feel strongly about this idea that we should just ask for money, why don't you ask? You're an EAD member. I think you're a level 1 delegate even. What prevents you from doing that? You can. We're a decentralized organization. You're a member of it. So you should feel empowered to communicate that.
Yeah, so that's why I'm running to get to chief delegate. And if I do, then I will push to collectively reach that. I think that's a responsibility that should fall on the chief delegates is to negotiate and handle our treasury and get additional funding.
But why not a delegate? So that doesn't make sense. Like, chief delegates have no implied additional responsibility other than more funding. There's nothing in the bylaws that say that they do anything more than get more funding. So if the argument is that Eden deserves more funding and you have an argument for it, you could do it right now. Like, in fact, that might even make you a stronger candidate for the election. Hey, look what I did. Vote for me because I've already reached out and started the conversation.
The discussions are started here. So
I would just
the thing is, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dominic.
You can't lay it at the block producer's feet on the price either, right? That's all of us. Like, we're all responsible for that, right? Collectively, we're all members. We're all trying to take action. I assume to improve the value of the network, whether you measure that in dollars or not. Some people might not, but in general, that's kind of the one thing we can measure and agree on. So, it's hard to say, like, they haven't really done anything. The price just kind of went down. I hear you. I don't think we have enough funding, but I think the first stage is, why as a community we're not just releasing what we have faster, right? Fuck the 5%. Pardon my French, but that doesn't have to be that way. That was kind of arbitrary at one stage, but we should really revisit that. Let's take the money we have and do as much as possible with it, and then turn around and say, look, this is what we did with this amount. Now we want X, right? I mean, that's reasonable.
Yeah. So I don't know. For me, yeah. I mean, we see how things play out. For me, the 5%, if that's something we need to have further discussion as, I guess, an organization of what do we think is. I don't think the treasury. I think we need to reach a number that makes sense and not mess with that ever again. Because when you mess with the treasury drawdown, you're messing with future delegates' funding. And that to me that ruins the system. That's just my opinion. That's why I'm very strong on the 5 to 15%. And so like, I get what you guys are coming from. Like I'm all, and I'm also, I'm not trying to come out and like with my chest out and be like, hey, BPs, like you got to do this or this, we don't have that power. And I'm not saying that either. I'm just trying to make things like, to me, what I think is fair. And if you're asking us to mess with the treasury, me as an Eden member, my belief is I don't think like we need to be messing with the treasury drawdown. I think that's a systematic design that, and I could be wrong, but when I think about it, that's something that should stay and be very hard to change, because that, to me, when I start thinking about changing the treasury drawdown, that's something that can be corrupted in the future. And it's all about, to me, setting a good like design of how we're messing with the treasury, because then, yeah, like I said, we mess with it, you're messing with future when you're increasing it. And that's just something that, I'm open to learning more and discussing more if maybe I'm wrong with thinking and putting so much weight on being able to change the treasury drawdown. But to me, that's just kind of how I view.
It is hard to change, Felix. Like the whole point is the current CDs could change it tomorrow. Like they could change it tomorrow without an election. So they're setting the precedent that it should be hard to change. And it is now hard to change. They've set that precedent because they're not doing it. They could. And they're saying instead they've made a proposal. It needs to be ratified through an election process. So this is exactly what you want, man. It's hard to change.
So I guess my question though to you, Chris, because you ask a lot about like, why not go and ask or like propose for more funding, but why are we so afraid to ask the ENF first ENF or the foundation first to get a top up, rather than going and making the decision to change our treasury
The reason is I've given you many times, man. It's Chuck's analogy. We have a ton of money in our bank account currently, and now we're asking for more money. So it's like, I would never go to my dad and say, hey dad, I need some cash. I got $1,000 in the bank, but I need 300 more. Are you cool with that?
And that's my,
it's a silly point. And that's where the money you have, and then show you spent it well,
and then go ask,
and then I'll top you up.
The analogy though of like asking your dad. So like I said, that's you're being dependent on somebody, and the whole point of this is to be independent.
Well, you're drawing into it. That was the purpose of his analogy.
Ask the bank then.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're being dependent on the bank. You can go elsewhere though. That's what I'm saying. Like being dependent because of how you mess with.
We're dependent no matter what, because we can't make the decision, Felix.
We're dependent because we have never demonstrated any true sense of value that any other external stakeholder will fund.
Like I said,
if we're creating so much value, Felix, if we're creating so much value, why aren't we getting funded left, right, and center from everybody? Right. If we like all this talk of all this value you've created, I think we're being a bit delusional and stuck in our circle. There is no external value being created.
Not articulating it. It's one or the other.
I mean, like, I don't know. For me, I try to, like I said, I think the treasury drawdown is, to me, I think we need to be touchy. I'm not saying that I'm set in stone in that idea. My main point though, is I don't think that it's unfair. And I don't really think it's like us going and asking for more money when, like I said, we were initially funded with that being part of the design of like how our system works. There's the system was built with a treasury drawdown instead of just an open treasury for us to be able to manage however we wanted.
But
no,
the system
that was just
no.
That was just arbitrarily decided by Dan.
And that was arbitrarily decided.
I was there.
Not with the understanding, but as insurance in the event that we never get funding again.
Yes.
That would give us a runway for 5 years. That was the initial thought. If we don't, and it was independent thinking. It was like, thank you for the funding. If we don't ever get funding again, and we don't plan on asking for funding again, blah blah blah. This is a route so that within 5 years we'll be self-sufficient and we'll be generating our own, or all that. But it was based on the assumption that we would never see funding again. Mm-hmm. But I am completely in favor of raising the funding levels because I have full confidence in the EOS network. I've got full confidence that EOS is going places, that we are the only, like, we have such extreme potential. It's not even funny. And Eden within EOS has extreme potential as an organization. And I think if we just keep proving ourselves, and we have been proving ourselves, like we voted to take responsibility for our own house. And the previous chief delegates put those, by saying, we're only going to address code changes that are like achievable. They're basically just variables. Their whole outlook was, we're not going to ask anybody for help. We're not going to rely on Fractally to code this for us. We're not going to rely on anybody's help because we have our own resources, and we don't need to worry about pleasing anybody, right? That's what the first chief delegates were talking about. We took that and we ratified their recommendations. And in doing so, we took control of our own treasury. We took control of the active keys. Nobody can take Eden away from the elected system now. We have an election on Saturday. It could get turned completely upside down. And I mean, upside down in terms of the direction that we seem to be going right now. And that's absolutely fine, because the democratic process is going to reset 3 months later, and we can, it could be turned all back over again. But we're fine. And the network is fine with giving us resources and putting it at the mercy of this process. And we are fine with taking responsibility for our own house and putting it at the mercy of this process. And the chief delegates we've agreed, by the way that we've conducted things, that Eden has sovereignty over its own house. But that is with the understanding that our whole goal is to provide value to the EOS ecosystem. That was also part of the first changeover. By establishing that mission, we aligned ourselves more with the block producers and saying, we're all in this together. Eden as an organization, this is not about experimenting with a democratic process for the sake of the democratic process. Now this is an organization that is here for EOS. And the experimenting for the sake of democracy is in another stream now. It's another oak tree, to use a previous analogy. Our tree and we've planted our tree in EOS, and our responsibility now is in our mission. And long story short, to come back to it, raising our emissions is no problem, because we're not going anywhere and EOS isn't going anywhere. And we're going to improve EOS, and they're going to keep funding us. And I'm fully confident in that. And the only reason to be conservative with those funding levels is out of fear that they will stop funding us, but they won't, as long as we show action.
Yeah. So, and I want to preface to say, obviously I believe in EOS too. And I believe, I have faith in the block producers that they want to democratize things. And, also they funded Eden. I guess my hesitancy, and I don't know, you guys say it's arbitrary, and maybe if that 5%, maybe it's just a point that gets brought up, though, that is something to consider, because I view it as a contingency in case whatever reason we have a couple, maybe a string of chief delegates that end up in the election that basically mess up our budget. At least we have you have that contingency fund, and that's where I see the value in having a set in stone treasury drawdown. And some things, for me, like I said, Chris posed the question, why not, bring that proposal as a delegate? We have more weight if it's the chief delegates that make the proposal to the network as a representation of Eden. And for me, I don't see how it doesn't hurt to first do that, see where they're at with it. They can say no. Okay, and then we start talking about what do we move the treasury drawdown. For me, just like I said, with the catalyst events that's coming up, I start to think too, okay, well, what happens? We do this 15%, we draw down our treasury, and then we have a big price appreciation and price in EOS. Are we going to get when things are it's harder to give money, even if you have good intentions? It's hard to give out money, especially when you have a lot more of it. If it's more valuable, it's going to be harder for the block producers. Maybe it could be you could argue subconsciously, you may find a reason why you would limit how much you would give in support of Eden versus if it was like lower right now. Like we have a chance to have get more stake. I don't know. And like I said, I think it goes more towards a gesture. And I don't think it hurts to first ask. And I think that should be done on the chief delegate level, though, before we start tinkering with the treasury drawdown, especially like I said,
really
considering the events that's coming, because I don't know, this falls into speculation, but I don't know. I think token 2049 is a big event. Trust EVM, the rebranding.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I'm just saying, like, if we are pulling and we're deploying funds right now at a bigger treasury drawdown with
Is this
EOS,
financial advice?
it's not financial advice, but that to me is just not like strategic to spend our EOS.
Why don't we put an Eden booth there? Why don't we put an Eden booth in there? That takes money though.
A what?
Why don't we put an Eden booth in that event?
Oh.
It's just a decision, but it's a decision by the whole group, and we have to come. But that would cost tens of thousands of dollars, and that would require a decision by the corporate group, by the chief delegates to decide, hey, we're going to spend our resources on this, and it would be over and above chief delegate funding, perhaps, but it's something to think about. But that's something that the whole, that's what I'm talking about. That's in the same vein of we've decided to upgrade our code, and we're going to spend our treasury on that. But sorry, just Felix, you dropped one word, and then Dominic will take over. You said our stake, the stake of increase our stake, and we can't look at our treasury as stake in the network. Our treasury is an investment from the network in a productive body, and it's not stake that they've given us. They've given us cash. And the stake that Eden has is in its membership, but that's our voting clout. But our treasury, we can't really look at that as a way to change the state, the positions of block producer or anything, because that's been given us by the network specifically as cash.
Right, but so I guess a quick counterpoint though, but it isn't part of your confidence though that because they funded the Eden, that they are open to us getting to a point where we have more stake in the network. Yes, I get, like, they want to see results and benefits for EOS, but also they also know what Eden's trying to do. Also, I don't think that's no secret. Like, they know that we want to get to a point where we have a voice to select block producers.
Well,
if not,
I don't think we've ever stated that. That's never been part of anything I've ever seen. I know it's been talked about, but I don't think that's ever been agreed upon.
I think agreed upon, but I think there's a lot of members that have, that idea. And also, like, isn't that partly why we feel confident though that we are going to get additional funding?
No,
if we provide value, because if they
didn't
didn't
mix
want,
the two things, you're talking about having decision-making authority over selecting block producers versus getting funded to create value. You have to stay in your lane. Having the ability to select block producers is kind of a completely different thing. I'm not saying it's not an option or anything, or not even something to look for, but just, you got to kind of keep things in their lane, man. Right? Like,
that's
like Chuck said, we were given money exclusively to add value and test a process. Well, test a process, Eden, as a community building exercise, a new consensus protocol that's ideally anti-corruption, and then see what happens with that funding. Does it add value to the network so that all stakeholders who are all watching us to some degree would eventually make some kind of decision as to whether or not to increase it, refill it, like you're saying, so on and so forth. But they've also had nothing to do with this dollar amount, right? Like, you're kind of switching back and forth there. It's like, do we want a lot of EOS so we can vote, or do we want high dollars? Do we want both? Like, no one ever guaranteed us a dollar amount. They couldn't. Everybody's sort of suffering under the lower amount. And that's why I'm saying, if there's ever been a reason to raise the amount that we're distributing, is because I do agree with you. It's a pretty low amount right now. I mean, What are you going to do with $500? Really? Now, I'm not saying nothing. People have done stuff with that, and that's great. Then that goes back to my original point. We all keep saying we've done so much. Why can't we just articulate that? I mean, that's probably the first thing we should all be doing. Let's start like doing that, right? Like we just kind of did in the Fractal meetings, but we need to do that as an organization because this shit should be front and center on everywhere, right? Eden has done this, this, and this, right? Here's what we've spent your money on, basically, right? Here's what our energy and sweat equity and efforts have done. Thus, this is why stakeholders, because we're not just, nobody's begging anybody. We're not begging the ENF. We're not begging the block producers. We're not begging the other token holders. We're asking, because this is everybody's money, right? We're asking for a portion of tax, which is what inflation is, ultimately. We all know that. So I think we have a good case. I think we're all sort of saying the same things, but again, we need to make the business case to start. Because that's everybody's, right? You know how in a business you talk about what's the pain point? The pain point in EOS is the damn price. That's why I'm the one who said change the fucking mission to raise the value of EOS because it was simple and straightforward and easy to understand. Because that's what people want. Now, that might change, but we do anything with that or prove that we're doing things that are doing that. And we're golden, guys. We're golden.
Well,
the checkbook will get open. The purse strings will be.
There wasn't any mention of that where when $4 billion was raised. What was mentioned?
That's totally different.
What was mentioned was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and that kind of sentiment. People were expecting something that came from a guy who created the first decentralized exchange, the first decentralized social media. That's where that $4 billion came from. So that's value. That's the kind of value that will increase the price. If we're just simply looking to increase the price, then we need to create an army of trim bots and pump that thing, and then we all get to scoot out with all kinds of cash. That's not what raised all that money. What raised that money was people believing that this thing could actually replace the traditional financial system.
Do you know that for sure, though, Perry, or do you just think?
I don't know. I mean, I don't.
That's what I mean.
Don't,
we make a lot of assumptions, but 85% of that money came from
not any more or less than what you just said. I'm just telling you what I can say that I can tell you what was on the YouTube EOSIO channel, and that has since been deleted, which was a series of videos of sit downs with Brendan and Dan, talking about the values of Block One and what they were creating. And I made a poem about that reflected all of those values. You can read that. I could send it to you if you hadn't seen it. And it had nothing to do with price. It had all to do with people's freedom. And that's what raised $4 billion.
No,
that's what I think. That's what I think we should be
That was the
driving.
English speaking community, though. And that's been our big problem, man. 85% of the money came from Korea and China. What did they do when they had the opportunity? Vote buying. I'm telling you, it's a different culture. And I've talked to those folks. The 4 billion wasn't for Dan's idealism. That's what sucked the West in. I'm telling you, just talk to people, right? And we believe that. And I believe that. I'm fucking with you. That's why I'm here. But we have to take into consideration that I promise you that's not true for the majority of the current EOS stakeholders.
Well, I'm for increasing the value. Don't get me wrong.
No, I know you are. And I know you are. But I'm saying that's the first step that can get us to where you're talking about.
Well, that's where I think we differ. I think the way you get an increase in value is by creating something that it gives people freedom. I don't think that you need to create utility. And the utility that Dan was offering was manifested in a decentralized exchange, a decentralized social media app, and what was his third? Okay, so decentralized applications. That's real value, real utility that people valued. And I don't think it's the other way around. I don't think we should be driving primarily with marketing. I think we should be driving primarily with development of utility. That's
Okay, we need to bring this back to pragmatism and Eden.
and I will do that
Bring
right
this back
now.
to what Eden is
I will,
doing.
I will do that right now. And I'll do that by saying that when you guys see what I've created, I want you to look at it, and I hope you appreciate it. And I want you to know that I am releasing it here and now because of what's happening in Eden and Eden Fractally, and these decentralized governance organizations. I'm motivated by that. I've had it for 2 years. It's been running in one form or the other. I've been testing it, changing it, playing with it, using it for more than 2 years, actually. Or no, actually, a little less than 2 years. I'm releasing it now because I believe that I can be compensated for it in a decentralized way. It reflects my values, and I'm incentivized. So that's value. So if you're an ENF or you're anybody in the community, and you want to wonder if these things that Dan has created that we're using right now are valuable, look at what I've created and know that I released it to you, and you now have access to it, advertising free, because what we are using now and what Dan has created, there's value to it, and I'm proving it.
Do you have a link?
I'll share it with you privately. I don't want to give it out publicly at this moment because it's the website is dnews.zone. But if you go there, you'll just see a construction page. I'm working on a subdomain for my development, but I'll share one with you privately.
Okay.
I just don't want it to be on the video and for the general public. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did share an image of it in the chat. So if you scroll up and you can see an image of it, and so that's a direct result. That's a direct result of what we're doing right here, guys.
Okay.
Thank you,
Felix.
Yeah. So I got
it. Gents, I got a boot, but thank you. This has been cool, and I appreciate everybody's passion, no matter what.
Yeah, and real quick, Dominic, I wanted to. Yeah, I'm about to head out too. I just want to kind of like sort of address
Sorry,
like
I got a second.
Yeah. So so I'm excited to see what happens. You know, I think regardless, like I said, I think our contingency is the Eden respect. But yeah, I guess I kind of lost my train of thought, but it basically, I guess I wanted to kind of what you're pointing out is I think I don't think that the block producers are completely they wouldn't fund something that could democratize the whole, I mean, I think that they got to know what Eden is to a certain extent, what it could potentially be. Now, there's always going to be, nobody wants to give away power. There's going to be tension and there's going to be pullback. My hopes, though, is that, you know, that they are willing, though, to let a little pull, you know, and I think that's what everyone's belief is. And, you know, time will tell, but, and like I said, our contingency is the Eden respect token, but that's kind of just my belief. And that's where I kind of stand with like, you know, approaching the network in this fashion of like, you know, kind of help us out. Cause when we have funding to be able to be like, hey, if you bring somebody to here, you're going to get rewarded because we appreciate added members in a token. People who become obsessed with the EOS token are going to be going out. And then that naturally, like, to me, that just seems like this is it. That's how we build and get mainstream adoption with EOS. And then that's just going to benefit Eden. And this can all happen here on the Eden Fractal, but.
I agree. I just suggest that usually the easiest way to get power is to create value, right? And if you have an overwhelming contribution, you kind of have to be given power, because you just say, okay, well, we can take our value elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
So it's just strategically thinking about it from my perspective. I just feel like we've lacked a balance. You know, it's either like all development or all marketing. And I would love to see us come together collectively with all of our skills, the creatives, the devs, the strategists, the business development people, you know, the content folks, the marketers, the PR, right? all of us come together and start taking a holistic approach and just row in the same direction and have something measurable so that it's undeniable.
Oh, no, I agree. And communication is key, you know, and that's where that's kind of where I just stand. Is like, we just got to open up the communication so we kind of have a better idea so we can all move in the same direction. But
absolutely.
But which is why what you're doing right now by hosting this meeting is so important. So I thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone here.
I'll talk
Awesome
to you guys,
stuff.
If not sooner, certainly next week. This was fun.
Yep. All right. Well, I'll see you guys Saturday.
Bye.
Everyone take care.
Whatever. Bye.